Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the high-stakes world of professional poker. But we're not just here to talk about cards. We're here to unpack some incredibly powerful lessons on decision-making and psychology from one of the greatest to ever play the game, Daniel Negreanu.
Have you ever watched a pro like Negreanu make an insane call on a huge bluff, and you just think, how in the world did he do that? It looks like straight-up magic. But here's the thing, what if it isn't? Today we're going to deconstruct that magic and show you that it's actually a set of skills we can all learn and even use in our own lives. So how does he do it? Let's break it down.
First up, let's talk about the art of the bluff. Now, most people think bluffing is just, well, lying. But for a pro, it is so much more sophisticated. The first pillar of thinking like a pro is understanding that a great bluff isn't a lie, it's a story. And that story has to make perfect sense from start to finish.
And this is where Negreanu is just brilliant. He reframes the whole idea. He sees it as building a narrative. Think about it. Every single action you take at the table, every bet, every check, is like another sentence in the story you're telling your opponent. And if you want them to believe the ending, every chapter leading up to it has to be consistent.
Negreanu uses this amazing cheating husband analogy. If you come home and say you are out golfing, but you don't have your golf shoes or your hat, the whole story just crumbles. The details don't match up. It is the exact same thing in poker. If you suddenly make a massive bet on the last card, trying to sell the idea that you have a monster hand, but all your previous bets were tiny and timid, nobody's going to believe you. Your story just doesn't add up.
So, if telling a believable story is one side of the coin, what's the other? Well, it's reading your opponent's story. And again, this isn't some kind of psychic power. Pros read other people by treating every single interaction as basically rigorous data collection. You see, Negreanu is like a detective at the table. He's constantly building a profile, grabbing clues from all over the place. He'll ask what you do for a living. A criminal lawyer who twists the truth for work is probably more comfortable bluffing than, say, a Buddhist monk, right? He notices cultural tics, body language, how you talk. Everything is a piece of data that helps him understand how you think. But here is the real key. You're not looking for some universal sign of lying like you see in the movies. That's not how it works. What you're doing is figuring out how a person acts normally. You're establishing their baseline. And then you watch for any little deviation from that pattern. In poker, we call those deviations tells. He tells this fantastic story about a player who is always chewing gum. For hand after hand, he just watched and collected data. He noticed a pattern. When the guy made a big bet but stopped chewing his gum, he was bluffing. When he kept on chewing, he had a great hand. So days later, they're in this huge pot. The guy shoves all his chips in, and Daniel sees it. The gum stopped. He trusted his data, made the call, and won a massive pot. That wasn't magic. It was methodical observation. Okay, so this brings us to our third and honestly maybe the most critical skill of all. It's not about telling stories or reading other people. It's about mastering the opponent that lives inside your own head. To really hammer this point home, Negreanu poses this scenario. Let me ask you this. Imagine two players in a tournament. They both have exactly 200,000 chips. On paper, they are perfectly equal. But are they really? Not even close. You see, player A started the day with 1 million chips and has lost most of them. They're on a mental downswing, stuck in the past, feeling miserable, and they're probably going to play badly. But player B, they started with just 20,000 and have built it up to 200,000. They're on fire. They feel like they're crushing it. Even though they have the exact same number of chips, player B has a huge mental edge because they're focused on the now, not on what they've lost. This loss of focus, this emotional frustration that leads to terrible decisions, it has a name in poker. It's called tilt. It's when your emotions hijack your brain and you just stop playing your best game. And you better believe the top players have a system to deal with it. When Negreanu feels that frustration, that blood boiling, he doesn't just ignore it. He uses this quick 3-step reset. First, he lets himself feel it. He vents internally. Step 2, he gets present. He acknowledges his body. Is he breathing heavy, tapping his feet? And finally, step 3, after a few deep breaths, he consciously chooses the mindset he needs to be in. Focused, ready. It's a powerful way to process that frustration and get right back in the zone. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Why does any of this matter if you're not playing for millions of dollars? Because these skills,
Telling a coherent story, reading a situation, managing your own mind, they're not just for the poker table. They're powerful strategies for life.
And this is probably one of the hardest but most important lessons that poker teaches you. It forces you to look luck and uncertainty right in the eye. You can make the absolute perfect decision based on all the information you have, play the hand flawlessly, and still lose. Sound familiar? That's life.
Negrani says the real difference between winners and losers isn't the luck they get, it's how they respond to it. The loser plays the victim. It's always woe is me, blaming bad luck, blaming anything but themselves. But the winner? They look in the mirror, they take responsibility, and they ask the most powerful question there is. What could I have done better? They use those tough moments to get better. So all of this, reading people, controlling your emotions, learning from losses, it all boils down to the single most important trait that a player and a person can possibly have. It's the foundation for everything else.
It's self-awareness. At the end of the day, that is the whole game. It's not just about understanding your own skills and your own weaknesses. It is just as important, if not more important, to understand how other people see you. Do they think you're aggressive? Do they think you're scared? Their perception of you is a real factor you have to play against. And that leaves us with his final thought, doesn't it? In poker, you have to constantly ask, how does my opponent perceive me right now? It's a matter of survival. But how often do we apply that same intense awareness to our own lives, to our jobs, to our relationships? Understanding that perception and how to manage it is a superpower that goes way, way beyond the poker table.